Hi friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. I really debated about whether or not I was going to film a Middle Grade Monday video for this week because the honest truth is this is the amount of my middle grade reading this week. And this one was on audio and I had started it the week before. But I feel like that's the reality of life. Some weeks, some days are going to be filled with reading, and some weeks and some days are just not. And that is the truth of my reading this week. So I did complete 4 books this week. 2 of them are not middle grade. I'm still going to talk about them here, and then 2 of them are. So this is kind of a more than just middle grade or not just a middle grade Monday. That's okay, right? I'll start with the middle grade because that's why we're here. The book that I listened to on audiobook this week is The Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. And this is one that was recommended to me by quite a few people on my recommendations request video at the beginning of the year. And so I listened to this on audio and it was delightful. Very fun, sweet. I mean, everything kind of works out happily for Dorothy and her crew in the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the Lion, and of course, Little Dog Toto. I kept picturing the movie in my mind while I was reading it. There are a few differences to the movie, but I don't think that I've ever actually read the original classic. It was really only about a 3.5 hour audio, maybe 4, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It didn't like blow me away with anything that was new. I think because the story was just so familiar to me, but it was delightful. And I know I'm reading a lot of Newbery classics, but this was a fun classic to read that's not a Newbery. I think probably it'll just be a 3-star. It didn't blow me away, but it was fun. The other middle grade that I read, I loved, and that is Finding Langston by Lisa Klein Ransom. I definitely heard about this from Amanda at the Curly Reader. And in this one, we follow Langston, who with his father moves from Alabama to Chicago after the death of his mother, after the death of Langston's mother. They live in a little itty bitty tiny apartment in Chicago, and it kind of takes place during the Great Migration. Like if you've read the book, Isabel Wilkerson's book, The Warmth of Other Suns, that talks all about the Great Migration. I haven't read it yet, but I really want to, when a whole bunch of Black people from the South moved north in the hopes of finding better jobs and a better life and not working as farmers anymore, basically. And Langston and his father are a part of that. But this book also deals with being bullied at school because he's kind of a country boy. His Southern accent is strong, so the kids pick on him. He specifically deals with one bully who's just the worst. But in the process, Langston finds refuge and solace in the library. And in the South, he was not allowed to go to the library. There was no library for Black people in the South at this time. But he discovers this library that is filled with people who look like him. And he discovers the poetry of Langston Hughes. So this book has poetry in it, and Langston is discovering that he's kind of named after Langston Hughes. And he really finds himself connecting with these words of Black writers of the time. And it was so good. It's a teeny tiny little book. I kind of read it through it pretty quickly, but it has so much heart. And I thought it was wonderful. I'm really excited that I picked that up. Great recommendation, Amanda. I also completed 2 non-middle grade books, both of which I didn't start this week, but I finished both of them this week. The first one is The Lazy Genius Way by Kendra Adachi, and I have been reading this for a couple months now. I took my time. It wasn't one that I felt like I needed to sit down and kind of fly through. I wanted to think about it and process how I could put into practice some of these practices, put into use some of these practices that she talks about in this book. So basically, the main idea of this book is to really figure out what matters to you and embrace that and be genius about the things that matter to you and then lazy about the things that you just don't care about. Tell that to the sink of dirty dishes. I live that out every day. Dishes are not important to me. Having a clean kitchen is not important to me, so I'm lazy about it. But there are other things that do matter to me, and that's what I need to be a genius about. I really appreciated her perspective and her voice in this book. I really felt like I was sitting down chatting with a friend. She has 13 different principles that she goes through throughout this book, all around the idea of embracing what's important and being lazy about the things that aren't. So there's things like put things in the right order. There's things like make house rules for yourself, decide once about certain things. I just think that this was really good. It's definitely a book I feel like I could come back to when I feel like I'm floundering or putting a lot of stress on myself. This is one that I think would be a good one to come back to. I did not mark this up. I did not underline, but I could, and I feel like I would. I feel like I would benefit from doing that. So really, really good. I'm giving it 5 stars for a nonfiction. It was fantastic. I should say also that Kendra Adachi is a Christian, but this is not a faith-based book. It's more along the lines of self-help, but you do see her values, and she does talk about her faith a little bit in here. Very, very, very minutely. It's definitely not a based in the Bible, gospel preaching book. It's definitely a lifestyle, life hacks book. And her big thing is that what matters to one person might not matter to someone else, and that's okay. So she's not giving recipes or to-do lists of things to follow. It's because everybody's is going to look different. Yeah, I really liked it. And then the adult fiction that I finished this week was From Sand and Ash by Amy Harmon. Amy Harmon is one of the 6 authors that I'm determined to read this year as one of my goals. And now I finished another one. I think I'm 3 down until only March. I think I've read from 3 of those 6, which is fantastic. I absolutely want to read more from Amy Harmon. This book was so good. This one in particular takes place during World War II in Italy. And we follow Angelo and Eva. Angelo came from America. His father sent him to Italy to live with his grandparents, who were on staff at the household of Eva and her father, who are Jewish. So Angelo is Italian, and he ends up becoming a priest. But there is a really strong bond between Eva and Angelo, and a love story ensues throughout this book. And we do see their love for each other. I appreciated his struggle between his calling, or what he believes to be his calling, and yet his love for Eva. I thought that struggle was portrayed really well. I thought the writing in this was fantastic. There were a few different quotes that that blew my mind. There's one, let me see if I can find, I dog-eared my pages. How about that? I loved this quote. Angelo, it's towards the end, but it's not spoilery. He's just talking about doing what's right. Because ultimately, during the war, Angelo played a big part in the Catholic Church hiding Jews in their convents, in their churches, and with members of their church in the midst of Italy being occupied by Germany. In the author's note, we learn that in Italy, it's totally flipped from the rest of Europe, where I want to find the exact percentage because it was amazing to me. I can't find where the exact percentage is, but I think it's maybe like 80% of Jews in Italy were saved by people in the Catholic Church, and 20% sent to concentration camps and work camps by the Germans. And elsewhere in Europe, that was flipped. I don't remember the exact percentage, but so maybe like 80% were rounded up and only 20% were saved. So it's just a remarkable thing that the Catholic Church did in Italy, that they stood up and played their part for the Jewish people. Like, just unbelievable. Anyways, Angelo at one point is struggling, as I said, with his calling and with doing what's right. And here's what he says: "Can I only serve God if I'm a priest, if I'm Catholic? I don't believe that anymore. I've seen too much. I want to do the right things for the right reasons, not because someone will judge or someone else will wonder, not because of tradition or pressure, not because I'm afraid or embarrassed to do anything else, and not because it's what people expect. I want to do His will. But that's what I struggle with most, knowing what His will really is. Not His will according to the Catholic Church, but His will." So good. And there's a music. Eva plays the violin spectacularly. And so there's a quote about music earlier on that was just lovely. It just had such beautiful writing, a beautiful story. I mean, I know that our market as readers, as historical fiction readers, our market is inundated with World War II historical fiction. But this is one that I think is worth picking up. I think it was really, really well done. And I cannot wait to read more from Amy Harmon. So good. Okay, that's it. That's all that I've read. But I do have 3 that I'm kind of in the middle of. I have been loving this reread of Anne of Green Gables. I'm over halfway. Katie from Life Between Words has been reading this aloud on Instagram stories, and it's just been so delightful. She is such a good narrator for this story. She does different voices. It's so peaceful and calming, and Ella Montgomery's writing always just makes me smile. Anne makes me smile. Marilla makes me smile. This book is just a book of my heart, and I love it. And so it's been a delight. I was not really planning on reading this book this March, but because Katie is reading it aloud, of course, I had to join in. I'm not sure we're going to finish before the end of the month, but I think we're going to try, and I'm just really excited to be reading that one. And then I did finally pick up The Green Glass House by Kate Milford, and I'm only not even a quarter of the way into this one, and this is my patron book club book for the month of March. We're talking about it next Sunday in a Zoom, so this one will definitely get read this week. And so far, I'm really enjoying it. At the very beginning, we meet Milo and his parents who run Green Glass House, which is kind of this remote inn up on this mountain. And they're getting ready for the Christmas holidays and a week of kind of no guests and just relaxing. But then all of these quirky, suspicious, strange people start showing up all on the same evening. And Milo is a little bit miffed that he doesn't get his week of vacation. But then the cook's daughter or granddaughter also shows up, and they kind of start this role play type game that reminds me of my brother talking about Dungeons and Dragons, because they each have a different character and their characters have abilities, and they try to find out this mystery that they have started to uncover. So super cute, fun, light. I'm really enjoying that one. And then I also just barely started, like only a couple pages in, to Smale Home by C.L. Williams. In this one, we follow a young girl named Wynne who has discovered this village outside of her home. The Smale Home Tower is where she lives in Scotland, kind of on the border of Scotland and England. Outside of the tower, in the grass, she discovers this village of tiny people, tiny houses, tiny animals, like this village outside of her home. And so she has a best friend who's one of the people who lives in this little tiny village. And that's about all I know so far. I was having a little bit of a hard time getting into this because it's written in first person. So we're reading it from Wynne's perspective. So like I did this and I did that, which is just taking me a little bit to get into it. But I feel like it's going to be a fun read. And then I have 3 more that are very high on my radar for the week. I mean, I kind of have my pile here, which is the ones that I want to get to, but we're like winding down now. But I really do want to read Leaving Lyman by Lisa Klein Ransom. Lyman is the bully that is a pain to, like, he is really, really mean to Langston. And I would love to hear his backstory. And I think Amanda said she even likes this one more than Finding Langston. And I loved that one. So this is from the library. It's also very short. And I'm sure I will get to this one this week. I obviously need to pick up The Brave because we're going to be talking about this one next Wednesday. So I'm definitely going to be starting this one this week, which is our group read for middle grade March. And then also on my radar is Alessia in Atlantis, The Forbidden Vial by Natalie Lane. I'm really excited to read this one as well. This was sent to me by the author, and so I want to read this. And it just recently came out, or is coming out in April. I think it just recently came out. It's about a young girl who finds out that she has familial connections to Atlantis, which is like under the water. I'm not sure how that's all going to go down, but I'm really excited for this one. So that is on my radar as well. So I hopefully next Monday I have a much more interesting video, more exciting reading video, and can tell you about a lot more books, but only 4 this week. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. I think what happened is last weekend was one of my Newbery weekends, and I read 8 books in a weekend, and I just needed a break after that. So I took one, and that's okay. But that's it for today. I would love to hear what you're reading. Have you found any 5-star reads in your middle grade March, or just in your reads in general? How has your reading week been? I would love to chat with you about that in the comments below. Check out the description for the links to the books that I talked about, as well as some other links down there, and give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will definitely be talking to you in another video very soon. Bye.